to the cloud. Here we go. Good morning, everyone. Texas in particular, if you have been on here for a little bit of time, you would agree that HEB is the best thing in the world. Although Mary Simpson this morning says that Great Eagle in Pennsylvania beats HEB. I don't believe it. I, I, I'm not gonna kick her off the call because she's our only panelist this morning, but if I had to, she'd be out of here. It is week, what is it, 22, 23? I don't want to fast track this, but we're getting on up there in the year. So let's start off with any gratitude, any shout outs, or any announcements that you need to make or want to make. Kevin Vorbeck, starting with you, go.
I will just say this. The one thing HEB doesn't have that other states' grocery stores do is the ability to buy liquor in it. So, like, it makes Christmas a much faster Christmas Day shopping and whatnot. So, shout out to that. But also, announcement we've got our second monthly Space for Military call next Thursday. So, I'll throw a link to the Facebook group and I'll throw a link to that call. We're going to discuss we're going to have a panel on how you can successfully get in front of veterans in the military community talking about their VA loan benefits. And then we're going to have a quick 20-minute conversation on a really cool tool that we can use to fight low appraisals when it comes to the VA loan. And then we're going to have another, house cleaning 20 minutes or so. But anyways, if you'd like to join, I'm going to link the call in the chat and we'd love to have y'all on.
Kevin, real quick, is this only for veterans or is it for anyone who works with veterans?
No, it's for anybody, especially in our ecosystem and even outside. If you guys have somebody who's curious about place and curious about what we're doing and they are in the military community, invite them on as well. It's for anybody that just wants to get really, really good at serving the veteran and military family community.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. Castillo, good morning.
Good morning. I just want to give some gratitude to my to our team's two new launch partners that we had. They did their mass action day yesterday. One of them, Kaylin, she hit 1,000 dials. I was super proud of her. And then our other Amber, she had a prior commitment in the morning. She started at 1 p.m. and she got 918 dials for the afternoon.
Nice.
So just wanted to shout them out because we've all done it. We've done that mass action day, and they did amazing.
I love it. I love it. And it still kicks our butt, right? It's like kind of like those AI calls. I was doing an experienced agent one yesterday. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. Glad this wasn't a real call, right? I love, love, love that. Glad that the ladies are in the house. Awesome. Great job, ladies. Deldy, good morning.
Mine is the same, like Zach. A new partner, 4 weeks. She did her mass action day. She did 302 dials in Mojo, and then she moved to Brivity and did 703 dials in Brivity and 117 connects. She was number one on the team, of course, at Brivity and Place for connects. And I don't think these connects, Adelina, included the Mojo. So it might have been over 120. And I love that because she moved most of those over that she had great conversations with and has about 5 follow-up for appointments afterwards. We need to do a better job of tracking those and making sure we get those all in the system. But halfway through, I said, do you want to finish the second half in Mojo or Brivity? And she said, absolutely Brivity. I can do this in Brivity. And I love that our Brivity dialer is more efficient today or our agents see it as more efficient than our Mojo dialer. So I love that.
Man, I remember the days. So this is yeah, you're an OG. This come a long way and I love it. That's awesome. Look at all these people starting off strong, man. Those of us who started in real estate with a pen and paper, man, we are so jealous of how quickly you're able to build and how like everything is accelerated right now. So awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Last announcement that I have is if you look at your calendar, what day is Monday? Is that the first? What's going on the first? What pops up on the market? You know it. I see you wording it. Expireds, withdrawals. It is the mecca of listings. If your team is not doing something, plug into whatever place is doing. If your team is not doing something, you be the person that starts it. So anyway, I'm gonna go over to Miss Mary this morning and get us started off so that it's awesome. Mary, there we go. Oh, there's Mary. There's Mary. All right, so we used to call you what? Mary, Mother of
Mother of
Ops,
Ops.
but I feel like I need to call you probably Mary, Mother of Pricing, because lately she has been preaching the message. Uh, I'm gonna let Mary introduce herself for 30 seconds, but before she does that, I want you guys to know that on the back end, I have been saying to Mary, you know what? Like, just give it to us as it is. Pretend like nobody that's listening is on your team and it's all good. You don't have to be politically correct. I don't know that Mary tries to be very politically correct in general, but give us a 30-second version. Where are you located? How many years in real estate? What did you do before real estate? Any goals that you have for the year? Just start us off real quick.
Yeah, so I am in Austin, Texas on your team. For those that are not tracking, I've been in real estate for 8 years now. Prior to that, I was a general manager of a local Chick-fil-A. Loved my time in the restaurant space, but I've been enjoying real estate even more. Our goals for this year across all of our branches is about 4 million in GCI and 40 net agents at the end of the year across all of our branches. So very excited for that.
Can you just to like sometimes we just drive past the Chick-fil-A, we don't really understand the mechanics of Chick-fil-A. About how much in business was your Chick-fil-A doing, or like give us a sense of that just so we understand.
Yeah, so when I started as general manager there, we did 7.5 million in my first year, and then my last year there we did 12 million.
Okay, so none of our real estate teams is bringing in 12 million GCI. That's the equivalent of what their Chick-fil-A was doing. So I thought that was really cool. She's ran bigger businesses than all of us here, so that's kind of neat. But we'll take it to real estate. In talking with Mary, she said something that stuck with me, and I want her to expand on it. We're not doing the seller a favor by listing their property. Anyone can list their property. What we're doing is providing a level of service that the average agent cannot. What do you mean by that, Mary? Expand on it.
Yeah, so I think we often fail to remember that the average agent in our market literally can't do what we can do. Not just because we're just these great, amazing agents that are unstoppable, but because the average agent doesn't have the resources, the tech, the backing, the experience, the understanding that we do by being partnered with our local teams and being partnered with Place. So the agents that we're competing for against or the agents we're competing against in appointments, they're not our equal competition, but we treat them like they are. And sometimes we actually go into these appointments afraid of those other agents that we're up against. And by doing so, subconsciously, we're telling ourselves that we're not worthy of winning this listing. And so we're already undercutting our value before we even enter the door. So we feel like we have to give everything away. We start offering services that we wouldn't normally offer, or even worse, start cutting our commission just to get them to sign with us. So we're not starting off on a higher foot of I'm the expert, you can trust me, I know what I'm doing more than any of these other agents that you're talking to.
You use the metaphor, you're the GPS and the seller's the driver. What do you mean?
So I guess to give an example of how this plays out is if you go into a listing appointment and the seller's like, I hear everything you're saying, and I get that you think that my house is only worth 300K, but I really want to list it for 315. And let's give the example of the house down the street sold for 315. So that must mean that mine is worth 315, right? And so the conversation would kind of go something like this. Mr. Seller, I absolutely understand what you're talking about. In fact, when I was researching and studying the homes in your area and what they sold for, I looked at your neighbor's house. And you're right, your house does have a lot of qualities to it that are better than theirs. But the one thing that that house has that yours doesn't is a third bedroom. And the market said that that third bedroom is worth about $15,000 more. The great news is a buyer bought that house, which means buyers are looking in your neighborhood and they want to live here. They just don't want to have to overpay to do it. And there are other agents out there that will take your listing for 315, and they'll do it for one of two reasons. The first reason is because the win for them is listing your home. The win for me is selling your home. The second reason, and probably the worst reason, is that they don't even understand the market or what they're getting into. I promise to work in your best interest, and the market is indicating that the price that your buyers are willing to pay for your home is 300K. And if I agree to list it for 315, I'm no longer working in your best interest, and I don't break my promises to my clients.
I love that. I love that. Um, Sellers, they I think what we misunderstand oftentimes is they're in the driver's seat, but at the end of the day, we do have a fiduciary duty, right? Like, so how have you found, like, how can we instill that confidence that the market can't, right? Like, that's what they're hiring us for, but that's really like, is there anything that we can say in a listing appointment that you can think of?
I mean, I definitely think that there are a lot of market knowledge gaps that a seller doesn't even realize they have. They don't have all the tools and resource, and better yet, they don't have the experience that any of us do. So they're going into it with what the media is telling them the market is doing, or what Zillow is telling them that their home is worth, or what their neighbor down the street did. So really, you have to spend time becoming an expert in your market and an expert in pricing so you can fill the gaps when they arise. And those gaps are going to look different to everyone. Some sellers are going to really care about the nitty-gritty details, and some are just going to want the broader overlay. But you have to understand it at a very detailed level. And I think sometimes we're avoidant of that work because it's so much more fun to go on an appointment with pretty before and after photos from other listings. And that stuff is great. And it does prove that you know how to market a property. But ultimately, they're hiring you because you know something they don't. And that's the market because they would have to take years of research and study and data to understand it the way that you do. So the value that you're selling is your expertise and you working the market for their benefit. And so I don't, it comes up in different ways, but the main point is the more understanding and time that you spend on building that skill set, the easier it is to convey in the appointment.
So if we're not doing that, so if we agree with the seller and kind of just move on, just to like not like burn any bridges, not to create any waves, what we're doing is allowing the seller to just drive blind. So we're no longer the GPS.
Correct. I mean, ultimately, the seller gets to decide what the destination is. They know the minimum they can sell their house for. They know where they're trying to get. And it's your job to remind them of that destination. Maybe it's to retire to Florida. So remind them of that goal and that dream. And does this price make sense for that dream? But ultimately, they're hiring you to be their GPS that's telling them how they're going to get there. They want to get to Florida. And that might not mean a 500K net on their property. It might mean a 450K net, but you can't lie to them because eventually you're going to end up right back on the same road, which is the reality of their situation. So the sooner you present it, the clearer the path forward is. They can move forward with confidence with you, knowing that you have their best interest in mind.
Okay, let's jump into what are we pulling for an appointment that other agents maybe aren't, like anything area or price point specific, or just a you just walk in with a standard CMA, walk in with nothing. Like what do you recommend?
So the standard CMA is always going to be important, right? The 555 method is great. I think the risk of the 555 method, especially when you're first getting started, is people tend to, or us as agents, when we're lacking confidence, we tend to put a little more value on those actives than we know we should because they're active for a reason. If they were priced right, they would be closed. So I think sometimes the broader CMA is a really great tool to understand where you're at in a mile radius. But there's three factors that go into a buyer's purchase, and it's price, location, and condition. Your seller can control the condition and the price, but they can't control the location. Sometimes for buyers, they can't control the location because it's affordability dependent. So especially if you have listings that are in that lower price point or that first time home buyer price point range, it's important to go outside of that mile radius because sometimes for buyers, or oftentimes for buyers, if you're 45 minutes from work, it doesn't matter if you're 45 minutes north or if you're 45 minutes south. What matters is, can you afford it? So by staying too localized and not seeing what the buyer pool overall is looking at, if they're just running a filter of sub 400 on their MLS search or whatever their agent has them set up on, you might be missing what other opportunities are out there for them. And you need to keep those in mind when you're in a competitive market.
Can you give us an example about pendings being up but median price being down?
Yeah, so in our market right now, we are up about 14% year over year in total number of pendings, which is awesome. We had a big fall post COVID, so it's great to see these pendings coming. But our
Okay, so like I just want to stop real quick because this is what happens, and I literally had this conversation yesterday. Pendings are up, we go on appointments, we're like, yeah, but the market's doing great. So we buy into the story that the seller is saying that, well, then let's just kind of test the market. Let's push the market. And we say, yeah, but Deldy said, the market's up, right? Michael said the market's up. Well, okay, great, pendings are up. But what?
but our price point overall is down about 15% year over year. And I actually heard it explained really well on a podcast yesterday where they said logic lies. And it's so easy for us to think that logic is the truth. It's logical. I mean, it has to be true. But the logic in that situation is that when you hear that pendings are up, logically, that must mean we're shifting to a seller's market. But if you don't look at the full spectrum of the data and you only rely on that one small piece that tells the story that you want to hear, then you're not actually communicating the truth to your sellers. It's almost like you're operating as them without the full picture. And so for us, because our average price point is down, just because pendings are up doesn't mean that all of a sudden we can test the market. In fact, what it means is the market is rewarding properties that are priced correctly on the front end.
I love that. What does protecting the days of on market of your brand mean? And like I guess how do you explain that to a seller who wants that higher list price?
So I'm sure that for all of us, when we first started out on our teams, we heavily relied on the track record of the team to sign our first clients. And that's one of the best advantages of being on a team. And over time, we start to sell more of our own properties and we get to rely on our own track record a little bit. When you let the seller control the price, you're giving them control of your business. So they don't have your business's best interest in mind. They have their bottom dollar in mind, which is what's important to them, and it should be. But what should be important to you is your business and how you're able to tell the story down the road. So every time you let a seller control the narrative, you're telling future sellers that you actually don't work in their best interest. You let them drive the process, and maybe their house will sell, maybe they won't. Instead of being able to confidently go forward and say, I sell homes on average 40 days faster than any other agent in this market, and here's how I do it.
I love that. I was talking to an agent yesterday, one of my favorite people, and he was saying, he was like, like there's a part of me that like, when a client says, well, I don't want you to give money away. I don't want you to give, people give $5,000 away so quick, and that's kind of like the seller's story on why they don't want to, have the right price reduction, for example. And and then us as agents are like, well, yeah, we want to prove that we're not trying to give your money away. And I was talking to him, and I'm like, but what are we giving away? If the market says 410, the market is 410. Giving it away would be 350. At 420, we're not giving anything away. We're still overpriced. Like that's happening more and more because you're right. We're looking at the market and we're like, oh, the market's up. Is it?
I mean, the reality is you can't give something away to someone who isn't willing to take it. And if you're overpriced, there's not going to be a buyer that's willing to pay it. And if you're priced accurately, like you said, you're not giving it away. You're doing what it takes to sell in today's market. And if today's market is not the market that you want to sell in, that's fine. I'll still be in business a year from now.
With everyone kind of listening in, maybe if you're driving and you've zoned out, I want you to listen to this next part. Mary articulates price reductions really well. I actually wrote it down like a couple months ago, and I was like, one day I'm going to have Mary come on Texas Power Up and tell us, because it stuck with me. You said hope without fulfillment is disappointment. Walk us through that.
So I think oftentimes we think, well, as long as I get it signed, I can go from there. I kind of glossed over in the appointment what I thought it was worth. So we'll get to that point eventually. And if I list it 50K over, it's fine. Like within a month, I'll get it down. But the seller is seeing the house down the street and saying to himself, what the heck? Why did that house sell? It's uglier than mine. Like, how did they get that to move? Does that agent know something that my agent doesn't? Because even though in your mind you communicated to them that their house is worth 50K less than what you're willing to list it for, they're hearing this guy said he's an expert. He said he understands the market better than anybody else. So if he's willing to list it for 50K over, there must be a buyer out there that's willing to pay 50K over, because what is he seeing that their agent wouldn't see? And so then you become avoidant and you don't really want to tell them, like, hey, we haven't had any showings, or look, the feedback hasn't been great. Guess what? They know. They can sense it in your avoidance. So then eventually you get frustrated and they're frustrated. And so you finally say, hey, let's knock it down back to that where we said, like, let's take 50K off the price. And they hit you with, well, what if we just try 5K and see what happens? And you don't want to come across as you're not giving away equity, or you don't want to come across as not working in their best interest. So you agree to just take 5K off the price. And then it starts the cycle over again, where the seller has hope that because you agreed, there must be a good reason that you agreed. You're a professional. You wouldn't just agree to list a property for not what it's worth. And so you drop the price 5K, you become avoidant when there's no showings. Eventually you have to tell them, or even worse, eventually they're going to ask you, what the heck? Why aren't you communicating to me? And then you're going to tell them and you're going to keep doing it. And every time that little kernel of hope that you gave them, that maybe this is the price point, you know that it's not, but they're hoping that it is. And the market's not the bad guy in that scenario. You are. And so then the relationship just gets sticky. We've all been there. And then before you know it, you have an expired listing and you're angry 3 months later when it goes back on market with some agent that you know isn't as good as you for the price you originally told them, and it sells within a month. So that's how I think of the kernel of hope situation.
When you were explaining it to me, like all I could think of was, man, instead of doing that one price drop that we know was needed to begin with, and we start doing those small incremental price drops, we're building such resentment towards ourselves. And like we don't want, like, we're human. We're not going to be like, well, the client is resentful towards us. No, instead we create a story. They're resentful that our marketing wasn't good enough. They're resentful that the guy down the street sold and we didn't, right? But every time we get their hopes up, like we create more and more resentment. Man, I really, really needed to hear that. Do you think that doing like small price reductions is damaging the relationship? And is there another conversation we need to be having?
I mean, I think it absolutely does, because again, it's just even though you're looking at it as one step closer to the final goal, they're looking at it as the hopeful opportunity that offer is coming in. And so you're almost not working. I mean, you aren't working in their fiduciary duty if you're letting them believe that an offer is going to come in at a price that you know it's not going to. And so it really does damage the relationship over time, because they're relying on you to be the expert, whether you took the time to become the expert or not.
How do you have those hard conversations early enough so it doesn't feel to them like maybe you're giving up on their listing? Do you do it like at the listing appointment? Do you do it 2 weeks in? Like what's a good cadence, or what do you see as a best practice? Because you've overseen probably, I don't know, like 500, 600, 800 listings by now.
Yeah, so I would say definitely in the listing appointment, you want to be having this conversation. So if you are going into it and you know that you're probably going to accept it listed at a little bit higher, um, and sometimes we do that regardless if we know we should or not. But if you're going into it, I think we sometimes get in the situation where we gloss over that fact and our script sounds a little soft. We're just like, oh, we'll see in 2 weeks. And if we have to adjust it, we will. You know that you're going to have to adjust it. So it all comes back to the message that you're conveying and being the expert. Because if you go into it more confidently and say, look, Mr. Seller, like we've discussed, the market is not supporting this list price. I'm willing to test it out, but only for a limited time. So in 2 weeks, we're going to adjust the price. I want to make sure that we have an understanding now. So 2 weeks from now, we can move forward with clarity and purpose and not waste any more time in getting your home sold. If you have that conversation intentionally on the front end, it allows you to then move forward 2 weeks from now because they know it's coming. And one thing our team has been successfully doing is tying that to a specific metric. So not just saying, hey, if it doesn't sell in 2 weeks, because they'll say, well, one buyer came through, maybe they'll circle back around. Let's give them a couple more days. If you tie it specifically to a certain metric, like if we don't get X amount of showings in this 2 weeks, we're going to have to reduce because that will indicate that the home is resisting the market. then you're able to tie it to more facts and data and not just to what you think is best, but what the market is indicating is best.
I like that. I like that. What about if the seller pushes back and they're like, well, let's just, I know you said we need a 20,000 price reduction. Um, let's just do five.
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. But remember when we had that initial conversation about what it was going to take to sell? In that time period, and if there's data to support this, this is where I'd fall back on the data. In that time period, this house XYZ pended that was very similar to yours. The only difference was that 20K price difference. Or, you could take it back to the data in general. This many homes in your zip code went under contract in the 2 weeks that you went on market. So, what that's indicating to me is that there is a high buyer demand out there right now. We're at the peak of the selling season. People are out there looking. They're just not looking at your home. And $5,000 is not going to be what gets them to look at it when the house down the street is 20K less for the same thing that you're offering. That's the house that they're going to look at.
How do you do that without like pissing them off?
I mean, you might piss them off a little bit, but again, the more confident you are in presenting the data becomes the bad guy, not you. You can't control the data. The data tells the story of the reality of what's happening. So the more you're able to tie it to facts and move confidently with that knowledge, you aren't the bad guy. They can sit there and be like, "Man, this market sucks." You can say, yeah, it's not the market we had 4 years ago, but it is a moving market for those that are actually wanting to sell. And I think sometimes we just lack the desire to understand it and to put it forward that in that way. We'd rather fall back on other things like the marketing or the open houses that no one's coming to, but at least we're hosting them, than the actual reality of the data that is going to move the property.
You know, I'm sitting here listening to you, and by the way, if you were my agent, I would feel very confident in you.
Oh, thank
Um, yeah, more confident than, your disbelief of HEB. Um, but I sit here and I think about this, and I'm like, man, if I went to an attorney's office and I was telling the attorney what to do, that would be a little weird. Like, that'd be weird. And they're like, yeah, like we can try it. Like that would feel weird to me. If I went to the doctor and they gave me a diagnosis and they kind of were like, yeah, I mean, like I mean, figure out what you want. What do you want, Adelina? Like, do you want to do this or do you want to just like see if you're just gonna die? Like, I don't know that we take our like business seriously enough. Like I'm listening to you and I'm like, shoot, man. Like this is an interesting topic. We gotta wrap up, but for the agent who's like listening right now, they've already done maybe two or three small reductions. The trust is eroding. They know it. Is there a way back? Like, have you already lost that listing? What do you think we should do in that situation?
I mean, I think there's definitely a way back. They signed with you for a reason, and hopefully it's not just because you agreed to overprice their home. Hopefully it's because of other things that you presented along the way. Um, you created a rapport that you can hopefully fall back on. That's why rapport building is so important. Sometimes we're so quick to just get it signed that we didn't actually build a relationship that we can fall back on. Your business is the relationships that you build. If you treat it too much like a transaction and not enough like a relationship, then yeah, you might burn a bridge along the way that you can't go back across. But don't be afraid to share the facts of their situation with them. Don't hide and hope that it's going to get better because you know that it's not. If you choose to be upfront and honest with them about the situation and that makes them want to cancel the listing, the alternative is that you avoided the conversation altogether and it doesn't sell anyway. Either way, you're not making money for your business, which let's not skirt around it. If you're not making money in your business, you're not a business. And so I think sometimes we think that, like, oh, well, because we're helping people, it's selfish to care about our bottom dollar. But at the end of the day, you're a business owner, you're not a charity. And so part of that is being upfront and honest and falling back on that rapport that you built along the way.
Who's ever had a listing, guys, and you're like, man, it doesn't sell. Now I'm not confident in my pricing ability. Now I'm not even confident that this industry's for me. Now I'm burned out because I just worked 6 months for nothing. Like anybody, just our team, right? Like none of you guys. I don't see any hands up. So maybe it is just our team. Maybe this is why we have the conversations around price reductions. Um, but I think about it as we're talking right now, Mary, and you brought up the relationship factor. I wonder if a lot of times we don't have the confidence of an attorney or we don't have the confidence of a doctor, even though, by the way, this is the largest asset that someone has 99.9% of the time, and it is that important, right? We don't have the confidence of that because it's so easy to enter real estate. And because it's so easy to enter real estate, we kind of make that our story that like, well, anybody can be a realtor. So realtors are really actually kind of not that important. And we really kind of in the back of our head think we just place it on the MLS and hope somebody sells it. Like I do think that internally there's a gap there. But to your point, when the relationship is strong enough, you have the confidence to say those words. But when we're just like, all right, on to the next transaction, on to the next transaction, on to the next transaction, there isn't any relationship deposit. So we feel weird like talking to them and being this direct with them with already the belief that we have that we're not important. It's almost the belief system that we may have just across the board. I'm seeing it more and more.
Well,
Um,
I think to that point, it's easy to become a realtor, but it's not easy to stay one. And it's that mindset that makes it easier to get out of business than it is to stay in business.
oh, it's y'all. If you got off early, I'm sorry. I hope you come back to this. It's easy to become a realtor. It is absolutely hard to stay one. Yep, yep. Something I challenge you with, if you got a listing that's not getting the traction that the client wanted, aka it's not selling, I want you to go back. I want you to go back the last 90 days in your MLS. I want you to go back and see what sold in those 90 days. I want you to go back and I want you to see what price they were at when they pended, the pending date. And then I want you to go look at your date during that time in the MLS and see what you were priced at. We did this yesterday with a listing and it sold for 412, and on the day that it pended, we were priced at 480. Today we're priced at 429, by the way. They would have seen our house if we were at 429. They would have bought our house if they were at 429 because we were the better house. But we were so vastly overpriced. And you're like, oh, vastly. Define vastly. It's only like what, 5-6%. That 5-6% is the reason that they aren't selling. And now they're like on this like snowball effect. So go back and look at the data for yourselves for every listing that you have and just be real with yourself, right? Like you're not doing anybody any favors. And that seller doesn't love you as much as you think they do if you're not going to sell their house. Mary, last words, anything you want from us?
No.
All right, sell some houses, people. We appreciate you. We will see you next week. I got somebody in mind that I want to get on here. So tune back next week. We'll see you guys. Have a good one. Go get those price reductions. See you guys.